Hey there, this is Patrick, Dallas Hockey Hangout, coming to you and then I'm not sure what to do with my hands here because my intro has been coming to you after X, Y, and Z, win, loss, whatever. But yeah, I guess we're on to the playoffs, and I did want to try and do some sort of a playoff preview for the Stars in Minnesota. So that's what we're going to do today. And to put things in perspective, though, I wanted to, evaluate just aspects of each team's game and feel as though, like, try and get a sense of where each team has an advantage. I'm sure there are 100 other previews that are going around that probably have more stats and information. I'll try and deliver some of that, but, I didn't want to dive too deep into the, depths of research because playoffs are a whole different animal. And I think that we are whatever you could expect. Let's say, for example, that there are both good defensive teams. So it's fair to assume that it'll be a low scoring series, but I just don't think it's going to be like that. I think there are going to be some 6-5 games, and I think there are going to be some 2-1 games. And so we'll just trying to look at it through different lenses. Like I said, I'm sure that there are plenty of other people out there that are giving grades to, oh, well, the Wild 4 group is an A and the Stars 4 group is an A minus. Like, I mean, they're two really close teams. I'm sure that you could get really into the nuts and bolts of it, but at least what I personally am evaluating for this series is the last two matchups that they played, which I took the time to rewatch, and the last time they met in the playoffs, which was in 2023, where we have at least some semblance of, this is what happened last time they met up, and Hughes here played well. Who played well? Spoiler, it was Oettinger. But that said, let's just dive right into it. Also, I will be giving like my feelings on the bracket, but I'll give games. But I do want to go on the record saying I don't feel like that is setting me up for success because if you have watched the NHL playoffs, it just takes one game, one penalty, one hit, because I am going to be talking about the 2023 series and the Joe Pavelski injury that happened there. And to me, I felt like that changed the trajectory of Dallas's chances that year. So I'm sure there's going to be some craziness in this series. I'm sure it will probably start with Ryan Hartman. So let's just dive into the few things that I'm looking at. So the first of which is the 2-1 overtime loss on March 20th. This was in Minnesota. So, yeah, what really stands out to me about this game is, first off, the goalies. Anytime you have a low-scoring game like that, like, you have to look to the goalies. And that just feels like a natural place to start with this playoff series because, and we'll touch on the last game that was played recently in which Gustavsson did not play well, but for all intents and purposes, it's going to be Filip Gustavsson versus Jake Oettinger. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and give the advantage to Oettinger based on his play in these last two games. Yes, they've played previous in the year, but I mean, December and October, and I just don't think that those are accurate representations of either team, especially no Hughes. I mean, there's Dallas is still working on its game, like the 5-2 win to start the year, it might have been in the Stars' favor, but that game was all over the place. So I just decided not to include it in how I would be evaluating these two teams. So as it stands, we're going over the 2-1 win by the Wild in March 21st, and then the most recent 5-4 Stars win on April 9th, which I think is a pretty good representation of how the series could look. Anyways, jumping back into the 2-1, Gustavsson made 29 of 30 saves. But conversely, in the game against Dallas in April, he made 15 of 20 saves. And the chatter, amongst Wild fans was that they needed to play Wallstedt. And yeah, I don't think it might be announced by the time this comes out, but like the Wild are going with Gustavsson. They're not, I would think it would take a meltdown game from him for them to go to Wallstedt, or just like it's 2 or 3-0 in the series and Dallas is up and they just need to change the momentum and put Wallstedt in. Because, I mean, I just feel like if they were really going to consider playing Wallstedt, that they would have played him in that April game. I just feel like that's what they're going to do. Now, that said, I mean, they lost that game, and part of that 5-4 loss was on Gustavsson. So I don't think it's written in stone that he's going to play every game. But that said, I think it's more written in stone that Oettinger will play. And just generally speaking, Oettinger has the experience, and he's played well against Minnesota, both of these games. So against Minnesota, in Minnesota, he was 26 of 28, save percentage of .929. And by the way, he lost in overtime, in which Dallas lost Tarasenko inexplicably. And he gets, I mean, there's nothing that Jake could have done on that goal. So terrific performance by him in that game. And then, yeah, you might be thinking tough, Jake gave up 4, blah, blah, blah. But guess what? 27 saves on 31 shots, like in a very important game for both of these teams. Like the April 9th game was essentially for home ice, and Dallas treated it as such. And, just to give everyone a refresh, I hope that more people watch this one and maybe haven't been following the podcast this year. I really appreciate everyone's support this year. But just generally speaking, the 5-4 game was pretty gnarly. And, Minnesota gets up 3-1 and, Dallas claws their way back. And yeah, maybe Gustafsson gave up some tough goals. But I mean, Dallas, their offense is as good as anyone's in the league. I would put their offense up with anyone's in the league. That said, I feel like that's a natural transition to the last time these two teams played in 2026, first round. Dallas wins it in 6 in Minnesota. And yeah, I mean, you pull out the box score. The first goal is from Rope Hens, assisted by Tyler Seguin. Second goal, Wyatt Johnston, assisted by Dadonov, Suter, no longer here. Third goal, Marchment, no longer here, assisted by Domi. Last one, Domi, assisted by Marchment. So a lot has changed, obviously, between now and that playoff game. But the one thing that is consistent is Dallas had Miro in that game, who was second star of the game, and first star was Jake, who made 23 saves for save percentage of .958. So just to review, biggest game of that series in Minnesota, Jake Oettinger was first star and stood on his head. Ever since that Calgary series to like essentially open his career, his first full playoff series in which he, you can make a pretty easy case that was one of the best goaltending performances in a series in the past 25 years, and probably, if even further than that. He was unreal against Calgary. And was he great against Edmonton? No, but not very many people were. And, we're not going to, move the goalposts based on, well, he wasn't good in the Western Conference Final. Well, I mean, the Oilers were pretty good that series, and generally speaking, was kind of a low scoring series. It was actually Dallas's lack of offense that kind of hurt them in that series, and their special teams let them down as well. So, I mean, I'm not hanging that series on Andre at all. So let's just hit you with the numbers. In that Minnesota series, in which it's probably fair to say that Oettinger was one of their best players, he made 170 saves on 183 shots for a save percentage of .928. And when you get those kinds of numbers across, a whole playoff series, like, I mean, that's just a recipe for success. And, to add more context to that, in those Minnesota series, he had 4 games above 900 and 2 games below. And the one game he had a 833, he stopped 20 of 24 and they lost 5-1. And that was, the second game. Oh, yeah. That was the first game in Minnesota, which you would kind of expect them to win. He was really great in that series. Seeing as I have like 1,000 things I want to bring up here, I'm just going to kind of continue to roll them off the top of my head. In that series was the infamous Matt Dumba hit on Joe Pavelski. And watching that back, pretty frustrating to hear the commentary on it. Oh, well, I think it was shoulder to shoulder, and obviously Dumbason's played for the Stars, so I've kind of let that go a little bit. But watching it again certainly brings up the angst because, I mean, the puck's way gone, and he levels him, and it doesn't really matter if he didn't elbow him in the head. If a player's not expecting a hit like that with the puck way gone, that's a super dangerous hit. I still maintain that should have been a major. And the fact that they review it and go to a minor is probably because they didn't see any like contact on the head, but like it's just insane. So let's just say, I feel like, we're probably due something like that in this series. The last two games headed into this series were very combative, very physical. Obviously, Dallas, well, everyone remembers in the last game on April 9th that it was Ryan Hartman that knocked Miro out for the rest of the regular season with what appears to be like a knee hyperextension. Lower body injury is how the team is categorizing it, or did categorize it. But needless to say, he's going to be back for the playoffs. But I mean, I would imagine that's still on top of mind for the Stars. And, look, they're not going to go out and run anyone or take penalties they don't need to, because obviously we know what Minnesota's power play can do. That feels like a natural time to run off some of these numbers again for Minnesota and Dallas. So goals per game, 2.87 for Minnesota. The goals per game is 3.33 for the Stars, 3.27 for Minnesota. I feel honestly like Dallas owns those numbers, but like largely they're very comparable numbers. Both teams have great power plays, and both teams have almost identical penalty kills. So the power plays, Dallas is 28.6. This was a graphic in the Toronto games. I like referencing a graphic I know that the Stars have already done their homework on. The power play for Minnesota, 25%, 28.6% for the Stars. Penalty kill, almost 80 for Minnesota and just over 80 for Dallas. Pretty comparable. And, special teams is going to be a big part of this. I also wanted to note, in that 5-4 win for Dallas to clinch home ice, Dallas did all of that, all 5-on-5 goals. So I thought, just generally speaking, Dallas, I feel like, has more ways to win. And, gun to my head, I could not tell you that this was going to be a low scoring series or a high scoring series. I expect there to be low scoring games, and I expect it to be completely tight checking. But it's the playoffs, and it's going to be 1,000 miles an hour. So I wouldn't begin to try and pigeonhole this series, because the teams are so similar. So back to Otter. I know I was running down those stats here, but I told you I had a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about. So, but yeah, Otter was .928 save percentage in that 2023 playoff series against Minnesota, and has a .912 save percentage in the playoffs. So, I mean, largely he's been a rock for Dallas. And yeah, to that end, let's see here, just 4 consecutive, his 5 wins in his last 5 games to end the season. Dallas ends the season on a 5-game winning streak, as opposed to last year's 7-game meltdown into that. It proved it didn't matter. Also, you can see how much I'm going all over the place. And that I wanted to note that with Pavelski out, Dallas ended up losing to Vegas that year. And I thought them not having Pavelski for that Vegas series and the conference finals, I thought that hurt them. So to that end, I hope that when the tomfoolery and the craziness starts happening in this series, that Dallas can continue to answer the bell and step up for their teammates, because after that big hit against Pavelski, it was the smallest guy on the ice coming in to defend everyone, with a Max Domi coming in there. So Dallas has the guys to do that this year. And, largely I expect it to be like an all-out war. I expect there to be some pretty gnarly hits. I expect there to be a major or two. I expect there to be, look, do I expect there to be a fight? I'm not sure, because both teams understand that they don't want to lose players. So I don't think there will be a fight, but I feel like there will be a lot of punches thrown with gloves on, face washing. I expect some craziness. And I'm glad that Dallas has been playing with that physical attitude all year, because they're really going to need it against Minnesota. Minnesota traded for McCarron, I believe it was, at the trade deadline. And yeah, Michael McCarron and let's see here. I'm not seeing any. Well, he only had one hit in that game in April. Kind of expected more. Trennan had 5. Marcus Foligno had 5 that game. I mean, the fourth line is just going to just skate downhill on Dallas defensemen. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about this 5-4 game, and then we'll kind of talk about the forward group, defense group, and special teams. So the 5-4 game, I mean, look, you can say it may not mean anything, but I know Minnesota is going to have this game going into the playoffs in the back of their head. They blew a 3-1 lead in Dallas. They had never lost when leading after regulation. They led 4-3 and then lost in regulation. Dallas scored 2 in the third and won that game. So that's not a great sign for their defense. Let's just look at their defensive players. In this game, they had Jonas Brodin, Brock Faber, obviously Boss, Quinn Hughes, Boss. Middleton, big guy, liable to get scored on. He played the least amount of minutes in this game, 11. Petrie, same. Both of them were -2. He played 12 minutes. And Spurgeon is a great player. But I feel like he's trending down a little bit. I don't think he's the best defensive player. And I feel like that's where I feel better about Dallas's defense core. Obviously, we have all had a lot of time to think about this matchup, and I really tried to approach it from an unbiased point of view. And look, I think the biggest Miro's coming back, so I would assume that means that Lyubushkin is going to be the odd player out. So it's going to be a combination of Miro and Essa, Harley, and potentially Myers. And then lastly, Bischel and Niels Lundqvist, who just came back. So obviously the Stars have been wanting to get Lundqvist in the fold for a while now. And so he comes back and seemingly is going to be in the lineup. I don't expect him not to be. And, in previous years, they've called up Petrovic and tried to, get him going late in the season. It didn't seem as though Dallas had that same strategy this year. Obviously, that seems like why they traded for Myers. Bischel and Myers are slow-ish. I'm certain that they'll get exposed a little bit in this game by Minnesota speed. But that said, I think let's just call Miro and Hughes a wash. I think Essa Lindell is better than Faber, even though let's call that a wash. Okay, but then Harley is better than Spurgeon and everyone else. I think Bischel is better than Middleton and Petrie. So that's pretty straightforward. And then even down into the depth, I think Myers can play well. I think that he's going to play well in this game because Dallas needs his physicality. And this, these games, I expect it to be fully unbridled craziness, cheap shots, and the team that comes out of the series is going to be and hurting pretty badly, I would imagine. So along those lines, let's look at the forward groups, because I do feel as though if let's just call the defense cores a wash between both of them. That because I have nothing but respect for Hughes, and I think he's a beast, a top 5 defenseman in the league. So we'll just call those defense cores a wash. But that said, I do feel as though Dallas has an advantage in the forward group. I want to give Tarasenko his love. He's been playing great. And Eriksson Ek is a great two-way forward. We know what Boldy can do watching USA. And then obviously the head of the snake is Kaprizov. That said, Kaprizov's smaller guy. I expect Dallas to be really physical with him. And, while it's Kaprizov and Boldy that have been leading the way offensively, I'm not certain that, I don't want to forget about Zuccarello, former Star. He had 3 assists in that 5-4 game against the Stars, so including a good one to Hughes, who walked in and picked a spot and beat Oettinger. But they've got skill. It's just that I feel like Dallas's skill is more high end, because I feel like, just generally speaking, Robertson, Rantanen, Johnston, Duchene, Bork, and obviously Hintz not playing this to start, but I mean, I feel like Robertson, Rantanen, and Johnston alone are a way better trio than Boldy, Kaprizov, and I guess you could say Eriksson Ek would be there, or Tarasenko. And then you're able to guess just Matt Duchene, who led the Stars in points last year. Maverick Bork, who's got 4 goals in his last 2 games. I love the Stars' fourth line. I love Oscar Back's physical size, defensive responsibility. I think that's where Dallas is going to have an advantage. I think the Stars' depth players are better both offensively and defensively. You know, it's negligible to a degree, but I mean, I think Justin Hritzkovian is just a great example. Like, he's going to go crazy in the playoffs, and I expect him to have some big goals and to be the anti Ryan Hartman, if you will. And these are where legacies are made, and I fully expect Justin Ristkovian to grab the bull by the horns on that. So yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, if we had to pick forward group, I gotta say my real gut of it is that I'm rolling with the Dallas forwards. I think it's a toss up on defense core because I think that's the strength of both of these teams. And I'm going to take Oettinger over Gustavsson. And even if for some reason it had to go down to backup over backup, I'm taking DeSmith over Wallstedt because DeSmith's been really good this year. I don't think it'll come to that, but still. So yeah, I wanted to go through a few other notes I'd had. Look, in that game in Minnesota in late March, a lot of after whistle stuff. So I think it's going to be crucial for Dallas not to fall victim to what Minnesota is going to be doing, which is try and go Dallas into this after whistle stuff. It's going to be, I would imagine it's going to be at the top of their playbook, is to get Dallas off its game. I think the Stars have shown in the past 3 years that they can avoid that when necessary. But on the flip side, that Vegas series that year comes to mind when you have Stone is under Ben's skin and Ben lost it. Obviously, Ben got roasted for that series. That wasn't the only reason they lost it, but you can see he got suspended, and that was a big turning point in that series. That was game 1, and then they struggled the rest of the series. So that's what I'm hoping for, not for Dallas, is just that they don't remove yourselves from the series. Don't lay a hit that might lead to a suspension. Let them cross that line. Now, I do want to go on record saying this is the same NHL that let Darnell Nurse just whack the crap out of Rope Hence's ankle, and that's okay. So I think that was a pretty clear advantage to Edmonton in the playoffs last year. And I think that, gun to head, I feel like Dallas is going to have to be willing to take a few more penalties this year if that's what other teams are going to do to them. Because imagine, for example, that Hartman gets his dander and gaze on Wyatt Johnston for some reason, and they decide that's who they want to pick on this series. He's smaller. I could see that being a thing. Yeah, I can't imagine that's going to go over well for them. I can't imagine that Dallas is just going to let that go. And also, I wanted to note that Rantanen has been dialing back on his physicality ever since his suspension early in the year. I would imagine that will be fully back in play for him in this series. I would imagine we're going to be seeing a lot of Rantanen hits. I would imagine he'll probably end up being one of the top 3 kind of marked men. I would put Ben and probably Ristkovian in there. Minnesota's going to be going all they can to run Miro and Essa, and so I would put Bischel in that category of guys that are going to do something about it. And from a fan standpoint, I can't wait. I know it's going to be crazy, but I mean, that's what the playoffs are all about. All those rivalries and attitudes and the hate that comes with it. The Stars fans didn't already hate Minnesota before; they will now. And because I can assure you, Minnesota hates Stars fans. I think we've seen that just on social media. And generally speaking, they're still mad at Norm Green for taking the team away. So Norm Green, thank you. As a Stars aficionado and fan, thank you for moving the team down. And if you're a Minnesota fan, just know that I'm really happy about that happening. And if you're an older fan watching this, I'm sorry that you lost your team and it took so long for you guys to get another one. I believe it was 7 years. 2000, Minnesota got their team after Dallas left in 93. I'm sorry it took 7 years. I would be devastated if the Stars left Dallas here. It would be terrible. So just know that I don't have a ton of hate for Minnesota fan base per se, but, speaking from the fan side, I don't have a ton of respect for their players. I think I've seen enough from their team to know that they have no problem crossing that line. Now, it's a different team. I really thought the team was being like not coached the best. Plus his playoff percentage he had a 348 win percentage. I imagine that's why they got rid of him, but they were a very heavily penalized team under him. I know that Minnesota's cracked that down a little bit since then. So yeah, there's so much to talk about with the series. I'm going to just kind of keep plodding along. I'm not taking any breaks to like get notes or anything. This is all one take. So just know that it's all up in here and trying to remember what I want to talk about. So yeah, I had mentioned that in that 5-4 game that all of Dallas's goals were 5-on-5 goals. And I think that's really important that Dallas is going to be able to score 5-on-5 with Minnesota, because if it's a special teams game and it's clear that like one team has more power play, let's say it's like a 5-2 power play advantage, I would expect that team that had the 5 power plays to have won the game. That's how crucial they are in the playoffs. So I think if I'm giving a main message to the Stars, it's don't take penalties. And I know that if you're paying attention 5 minutes ago, I was saying I hope Dallas is willing to step in when they need to, but do it between the whistles, do it, on the ice, do it with the physicality, do it with scoring. Don't fall victim to what Minnesota's going to do, which is going to be doing all that after whistle stuff. They're going to be doing all this crazy stuff. And I fully expect a narrative to develop like, well, that's how Minnesota is going to try and win this series, is getting under the Stars' skin. And that's probably true, because I think probably deep down, they know that they're going to have to try and do something like that to get Dallas off its game, because I think at least the Stars would agree, and this is how I feel. If Dallas is playing its game, they're gonna win this series. They've got the better offense. Defensively, they're more sound, I think. And I think Oettinger's a better goalie than Gustavsson. That said, I think Gustafsson's better than people think. So I think it's gonna be a close series. I think this Stars getting a home ice with that win in early April was critical. And because of that, I would give Dallas the advantage, because if it goes 7 games, I don't see Minnesota winning in Dallas. I also know that Dallas is a great road team, so I expect them to pick up a couple wins in Minnesota. I mean, heck, Jake is from Minnesota. He just played really well in that 2-1 overtime loss in Minnesota. He's done that recently. He's, like I said, he balled out in that closeout game 6 in 23. He's done this. He's been there and done this. Dallas has the experience. They've got guys that have won Stanley Cups. I mean, Rantanen's got a Stanley Cup. He knows what it's like and is going to be the leader of this team. Obviously, look, how could I go officially, this will get cut, but officially like 35 minutes into this podcast with, I don't know about y'all, but I was rooting for that last win for the Stars, because 3 consecutive 50-win seasons is crazy. If you made it to the end of this pod, I just want you to think about how hard that is to do. And just generally speaking, how like blessed we are as fans. 3 straight years they've had 50+ wins, and 3 straight years they've gone to the Western Conference Final. So if you're to tell me right now that they're going to go to the West Final again, and then from there anything can happen, like sign me up. But also, for anyone that's watching this, like Minnesota, that's why they traded for Hughes. They're tired of being a first-round punching bag. They have to get out of the first round this year. The pressure is on Minnesota this series, not because Dallas has been there and done that, and that maybe they might have some of it. Maybe they've got home ice. I'm sure both teams will win a road game, and then the narratives will change. But just generally speaking, the pressure's on Minnesota. They're the team that keeps getting bounced in the first round. So a couple notes I want to just run down before I give a whole bracket. Don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that, Robo has 14 goals in 19 games against Minnesota. Let me confirm in this. Yeah, I believe he's got, 14 goals in 19 games, and the driving aspect of Robertson not being chosen by Team USA. Yes, I do think that's a factor. I think he's mad at Bill Guerin. I think he's felt spurned by that. I think each game he's played Minnesota, I feel like you see he's playing with that energy. So yeah, also in that 2-1 loss in overtime, Dallas hit several posts. I feel like they easily could have won that game. Bobby Brinks stepped up in that game. I think that he didn't play in the 5-4 game. He must be hurt. I'm really excited to see what the final rosters turned in. We won't really know until playoffs start tomorrow. Oettinger was clutch both of these games. I don't care that he gave up 4 in the second one. And then also the fact that Dallas won that game 5-4 without Miro, and essentially the most important game of the season, Dallas did that without Miro, and they won the game. So yes, it's a small sample size. It's 40 plus minutes, but honestly, you could make the case they played better without him, just like from a standpoint of they outscored Minnesota after he was out of the game. But obviously, I'm a firm believer that Miro Heiskanen is the Stars' best player. So him coming back into this series is crucial. If he was not in this series, I feel like I would give Minnesota the edge because that's how truly close I think these two teams are and how good I think Miro is, because I've seen the Stars in extended stretches without them. They beat Colorado last year, but that was through goaltending and offense, and then they beat Winnipeg without him, and that was through defense and goaltending and timely scoring. And Dallas needs him if they're going to beat Minnesota and make a deep run at this. So a couple other notes. I wanted to note to everyone that I am sad. I'm sad that the regular season is over, because now that the regular season is over, the stress of these games, if you are a hardcore hockey fan like I am, the playoffs are stressful. It's especially stressful both in the American Airlines Center and on the couch, because you know what this means. And look, for me, I've been watching this team a long time. I want this bad for Jamie Benn and these older players, the Duchenes of the world, who also has the Stanley Cup. These older players that give their blood and sweat for this. I know that these players want it more than anything, and to see this run in any way is tough. So by perspective, I just wanted to note that, like, man, 3 straight 50-win seasons. What can you ask for if you're a Stars fan from a regular season? Another playoff appearance. They load up again at the trade deadline. I mean, Dallas has been in win now mode for the past 3 years, probably even more than that. And they've delivered largely. I mean, you could be a Minnesota fan. You could be a fan and be saying, oh, well, I hope we get out of the first round this year. I mean, that's tough living. Sports are tough. There's only one team that wins. I think it was asked Brad Marchand recently about Florida not making the playoffs. And, he recognized that they played a lot of hockey, and he saw this as an opportunity that he knew that the team didn't, for lack of a better phrase, didn't have it, and that this was allowing them to work on it sooner. So yeah, look, I mean, playing a lot of hockey, it wears on these guys, and Minnesota hasn't really been playing a ton of hockey in the playoffs lately. Yeah, definitely the experience level goes to Dallas, but I mean, this thing's a grind, and there are going to be some overtime games, and heck, the schedule alone is killer. So let's just talk about that. I love a day game. So Saturday, 4:30, I love that. That'll be fun. But the 8:30 on Monday, woof, you got to be kidding me. That game's not going to start till 9. I have to work the next morning. Like, what's going on here? Like, I get, let's get a central time zone. Like, we got other Eastern Conference teams, blah, blah, blah. Like, man, I mean, get your naps in, everyone, because it's going to be a long night. And that adds to the stress of it, too. It's like, you like in that game against that Dallas lost Pavelski, they ended up losing that game in overtime. And so you lose Pavelski in overtime, and then you lose in overtime. Like, that's like a double dose. The fact that Dallas won that series, in fact that they were down 2-1 in that series and still won, that's impressive. So yeah, look, there are so many storylines in this. Look, there's another one. Kaprizov's the highest paid player right now in the league, I believe. And hey, I imagine there are some fans out there that are going to be collecting on that playoff check that is going to be written to him. So, he's got a lot on his shoulders, Kaprizov, and he does a lot of his damage on the power play, but have nothing but respect for him. But I feel like Dallas is going to be able to get to him physically. That's just my take of it. So I expect other players to step up for them. And same for Dallas. Like, I expect Dallas some of their top players to be stifled, and that some of their depth is going to have to step up. But that's where I think Dallas has the advantage. I think they've got more depth. I think they've got more playmakers. I think they've got more guys with experience. And I think they're just a better tight-knit group overall. Yes, they've got Foligno brothers, but, that only takes you so far. They had Ben brothers for a long time. How did that work out? So anyways, shout out Jordy Ben. Loved him in his time here in Dallas. Been going for a while. I could talk about so much more. I think once the series gets going, you'll see that it truly will boil down to goaltending performances, power play performances, penalty kill performances, 5-on-5 momentum shifts. I also wanted to know in these 2 games, like Dallas gave up a couple breakaways in these games. I would expect that to see trimmed. And if they can trim that down, I feel like that's also to Dallas's advantage, not needing to, if they can just eliminate those 3, because man, Minnesota is just as good as Dallas in transition. So I think you saw it in that 5-4 game that they can get in, 3 at the line and pass it around. I think there's one play that comes to mind is that they just get it to, like, I think it was Eriksson Ek in the slot, and he just shoots it right away and almost scores on Oettinger. They play fast. They're good intent transition, and so are the Stars. So we're going to see an exciting series. I'll have more to break down. Sorry, this wasn't as organized as I'd hoped. When you watch all 82 games like I have this year, you've got a few storylines rattling around in your head. To me, the main storyline is how is Dallas going to put up with Minnesota's tomfoolery. I just fully expect them to try and go the heel route, the wrestling route of, we're going to be the bad guys. We don't care. And we're going to run people into the third row and we're going to take penalties and, beat us. I think that's what they're going to do. So I don't put too much stock. Obviously, Dallas has beaten Minnesota when they didn't win the first game. I don't put too much stock in Dallas needing to win both of the first 2 home games to start the series, but needless to say, they can't lose both of them. So have to get a split. I fully expect that they're going to play well in Minnesota. So a lot of things to consider. I have some thoughts on the bracket, so we'll just launch into that. I know this is probably the longest podcast I'll do all year, but tried to provide some sort of perspective. Let's start in the East. Buffalo and Boston. Buffalo's been dominating the past half of the season, but man, I've watched a lot of Boston games this year. I fully expect this to be a bloody series. I mean, Pasternak, I think, is the best player in that series. I think he and Thompson are at least comparable star power. And then you have Dahlin and McAvoy. Those are comparable players. I expect this to go 7. And given that Buffalo does have the home ice advantage, I'll say Buffalo in 7. But I absolutely would not be surprised if Boston won that series. It's just in the East, it was so tight, and the seeding is not totally representative of how quality the teams are. I think West is more indicative. I would imagine a lot of people are going to pick chalk on the West brackets. Out of those series, I mean, those series are going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch this first round. I think you're going to see the bags develop under my eyes as these playoff games go on, because I'm not just watching the Stars games and going to them and all that. And I watch all the other series when I can. And that means staying up for those, like, late night series, because heck, I mean, Dallas could be matching up with a Vegas or Edmonton again this year. And I want to know how they're playing. So just know I'm going to be committed to watching those games, and I'll try and give some recaps about what stands out to me about how those series are going. I think this Tampa-Montreal series is just going to be dynamite. I just think it's going to be so exciting. Kucherov is so great. Montreal has got so many great play. Caulfield has just been unreal this year. I think the world of Nick Suzuki, 72 assists. I mean, that's gnarly. 101 points, just a terrific plus 37. That's just crazy. But yeah, I mean, to that end, like, I'm going to pick Tampa in that again, based off the seeding. They had a 50-win season as well. Let's see here. I'm going to get you some. I mean, Kucherov, 130-point season. Like, seriously, that's insane. 44 goals, 86 assists. Gensel's got 88. So Kucherov had 42 more points. Oh, is that right? Yes, 42 more points than the next closest player. But man, I got to say, Tampa, spoiler, I think they're my pick out of the East. So I'm going to say Tampa in 6 on that one. I just don't totally feel as though Montreal is ready for the spotlight given who they're going up against. I think that's going to be a great series though, and will definitely be one of the main ones I tune into. I don't think this next series is going to be very entertaining, but I do think these teams have something. I'm going to pick Carolina in 6. Ottawa did well to make the playoffs, and but like Tim Stützle is their leading scorer. I don't see that as enough to beat the well-oiled machine of Carolina. So I think depending on how these matchups face up, if this is true, then Carolina would have they face the winner of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, I would give Carolina the edge in that. So let's look at Ottawa's team really fast. 83 points for Stützle. I mean, Tkachuk only played 60 games, 59 points. He's going to be a menace in the playoffs. Expect that series to be physical. I can't imagine this to be very high scoring, but, watch it. It'll be 5-4 games all series. I think on paper, it's not I don't think I'm not hearing the buzz of maybe like Dallas and Minnesota, but for me, the Pittsburgh Philadelphia series is going to be awesome. I mean, I've watched a lot of those games over the years. They get nasty in that matchup. I fully expect that to be probably the bloodiest of the 8 series, maybe sans Dallas and Minnesota. I fully expect that to be who can bludgeon the other the most. Philadelphia was relatively happy to see like a struggling team make the playoffs. Same for Ottawa. Same for these teams like Buffalo, like hasn't traditionally been in there. I love that for those fan bases because it just, it just reinvigorates you. Stars fans have been so blessed to have such consistency, but in the West, like the Ducks, the Mammoth, like this is big for their markets and for developing fanhoods and all of that. So Dallas has just been so lucky that they've been so consistent and don't really have to worry about that. Look, I'm going to say that's going to be a really beat 'em up series. So I think I'm going to go Pittsburgh in 7 on that one. And given that they have the home ice and it seems as though, everyone's healthy for them currently. So, and I just know that Pittsburgh has got a lot of depth on their team. Crosby led the team with 74 points, but I mean, they've got Carlson, they've got Rust. Anthony Mantha led the team with 33 goals. Malkin is probably geared up for another big run. These guys that have been there and done that, I wouldn't put anything past them. So just to finish it out, I'll do another review of this after I see everyone, and I'm sure my opinions will change. But if I had to see it pan out this way, so that would mean Buffalo would match up with Tampa. I would pick Tampa in that regardless. And then that would mean Carolina would match up with Pittsburgh. I would pick Carolina in that. And then if it's Tampa and Carolina, I'm picking Tampa to go to the Cup Finals. Stanley Cup Final. And in the West, yeah, I've got Colorado. I gotta say, I think it might be Colorado in 5. I think a lot of people will probably be picking that. I haven't really seen anyone else's. I try and avoid that stuff when I'm making my own picks. And largely, as a journalist, I've never really liked doing that because inevitably I'm going to have someone say, "Oh, well, you picked Colorado in 5 and it went to 7, blah, blah, blah." Like, well, it's the NHL playoffs and a lot can happen. Get to Dallas and Minnesota in a second. Vegas and Utah, I think, is actually going to be a sneaky series. I think Utah's